The UN is what it is. It is composed of these people who are even behind. You know that in the genocide, the French who got involved as well, the Belgians were involved, and they are the ones who sometimes influence or dictate what happens at the UN. I'll give you even another example. At the height of the killings, are you aware that the UN force was here between 5,000 and 6,000 troops? At the height of the killings, they removed all the troops and there remained only 250 UN peacekeepers, from 5,000+ to 250.
Why?
Because they were not able or they were not willing to do anything to stop the genocide.
Or could they have been ignorant to not realize the genocide was going to happen?
But I'm telling you, the commander of the force,
He sent a warning to the UN,
yeah, several times. There are cables, they are recorded. They are
I remember as a kid in the 90s, in the 2000s, I wanted to work for the UN. So I really had that image of the UN being the peacekeeping force. And I'm sure they do a lot of good. But what you're saying is that it's a flawed. Sometimes they do good, and would you agree? Sometimes they do good, sometimes they don't do good.
Sometimes may mean rarely, but let's go with sometimes.
So, why would the Belgians and the French not want to stop a genocide? Or some people say
you can see the connection ideologically from the beginning. If the Belgians were linked with this divisive politics from the beginning, you understand that. The second, with the French, in fact, the president then was President Mitterrand. He was a very close friend of Habyarimana, the president who died in the plane crash. Very close. One was like a father figure to the other. So, and he had bought into that kind of politics.
What politics? That the Tutsis are?
The genocide ideology is a politics.
But it's hard to imagine a French president.
It is hard, but with the lessons of history, the French president is no different than any other president, including that one of where they kill people.
Have you spoken to the French president at all?
We have. You mean the one who was
the one that was friends with the president, that the Javier, the one that died in the plane crash?
No, but I met very many senior officials around him and his son, who was also a big figure in politics of France into Africa.
So then we get it to the genocide. I think that's the worst part of humanity one could imagine. I think this is it. If you had to describe hell, this was it. It was described in the documentary. A journalist was like, I looked hell right in the eyes. So the message that was spread by radio stations, by the church, the Catholic Church, there were code words to kill Tutsis. So once the president's plane crashed, within days, it began. It was all planned. Rehearsed, not just planned. They said, cut down all the trees, get to work. These were code words, not sure if there's others. Essentially to slaughter, to kill as many Tutsis as possible. There was even like 10 commandments. And that included things like kill your neighbor, anyone. And if you married a Tutsi, you have to kill your wife and the kids.
And it happened. It did happen. That way, yes. And the kids, they would look at, if the father was a genocidaire, they would look at the kids who look like him, those are spared, and then they kill the mother and those who look like the mother.
And not just kill. The way they were killed was just brutal. You know when...
Of course.
So there's a difference between holding a gun and shooting someone in the head versus pressing a button in the Oval Office or whatever, and then a bomb drops somewhere and kills people. It takes a lot more for you to actually be able to kill someone with your own hands. And that's what happened in Rwanda. Those babies, when I went through the museum, babies were held and their heads were literally smashed on
It
the
was
wall.
very brutal. It doesn't have an explanation. It can't be comprehended by anyone.
And so, was there any reports of drugs being used to allow people to do those brutal things, or was it just the
Maybe
brainwashing?
some would be on drugs, but you can't have a whole population on drugs. There must have been, people, probably more people who were not on drugs than those who were on drugs, but doing the same things as if they are on drugs. And let me clarify this, because you see, the politics behind the genocide is served by those who they are into it and the extremists who are doing it. But when it comes, and that also brings in even the outsiders, like I said, a section of the Belgians and the other of the French who were very active in fueling that. But the rest of the world, even going by the example, say, of United States, you would not find people who from United States were actively involved or participating in the genocide. It's another angle now to this argument. The angle is, and I think we see it more or less every day for a long time, and it's like they didn't care. They just thought this, and it happens in the politics even of today. It's like these Africans
Yeah, the French
killing
president
each
said.
other, and
The French president said, "In this place, these things happen." That was a quote from the French president.
Yeah. Even at the UN, the arguments were there, and including the Secretary General then, who said, "Oh, this is just Hutus killing Tutsis and Tutsis killing Hutus."
They were not looked at as human.
So it's like, no, it's like these are brutal animals, so to speak. They are not human beings. So meaning all of us are like that. So this is what. So the simple. This divide in the mentality, some are inferior, others are superior, and the Africans, the Rwandans at that time, it's like, who cares? Because to prove that, you talked about the radio that was fueling this, and
cut down all the trees and
and so
kill the
on.
cockroaches.
There was even a discussion about saying, why can't even this radio be jammed and it stops spreading this hate speech? And it came from the United States. Some people say, that's too much money to. I think they even put a figure to it. It would cost them $250,000 US. So that was too much to save people. So why do they get bothered with that? That shows the dismissive nature of. We are talking about here some human beings killing each other, and very brutal people that have known each other, lived with each other, and so on and so forth. But how about those outside, otherwise unrelated, otherwise with the possibility and the capacity to stop that happening, being dismissive about it and say, why should I spend $250,000 to save 1 million people?
To an extent, that's still happening.
You know what that it is still happening.
It's still happening in Congo, but how does it make you and people here feel? How did it make you feel at the time as well?
We feel, we live our lives and as happy as we can. But we never forget the lessons of our history. We've learned a lot, I mean a lot, so that we know how to value life as well. We know what having a life means. I know what being a refugee means. I know what losing a life means because I have seen it in this genocide. A number of my relatives, very close relatives, were killed. A very family in Rwanda. Some of these people you meet, you have discussed, they have lost families. Some of them, the young people you see here, are left alone. They have nobody to look up to as a brother, sister, uncle, aunt. No, they all gone. So, but we have to live. We have to bring ourselves together and live a life but a life built on lessons learned, and that, in fact, you are there on your own. You are there for yourself. Don't be deceived by these outsiders who come, talking about human rights, freedoms, this, they're bringing things to you, no. There's nobody who can bring you a life. These are just masqueraders. They're just deceiving people. They tell lies. So we have to, based on those lessons, come together ourselves, do what we can for ourselves. And if there are friends, if there are people who are willing to work with us and contribute toward our development, we appreciate, but we know centrally we have to take care of ourselves.